What's up everyone, welcome back to another what if video. This what if actually got pretty popular, which was great to see because I really enjoyed making the concept, so I'm glad that everyone else is enjoying it as much as I am. In the last part, we got to cover what happened when Gohan actually got admitted to Yuuei, and his first few days there alongside everyone else. I heavily recommend watching the last part so you can get more backstory. We obliterated the like goal on the last episode, so I'm going to set another one for this one, and that's going to be 3,000 likes, so let's see if we can hit that and get another part going. So be sure to drop a like on the video. With that out of the way, now we can continue on with this part. So first I want to kind of clarify something. Without getting into any spoilers, unless there's some specific circumstances, people can't have multiple quirks. Instead, they either inherit one quirk from one of their parents, or they inherit a composite quirk, which is a combination of both their parents' quirks. The way I described it in the last episode made it look like Goku and Gohan had two quirks, which isn't possible. Well, at least in this circumstance. I asked you guys to give a new name to the quirks, and you guys came up with some pretty cool suggestions. For Goku's quirk, from now on we're going to be calling it Monkey King, since Goku as a whole is a reference to Journey to the West, and his quirks take largely from that, so I feel like it's a fitting name. It also kind of goes along with his hero name. For Gohan, his quirk is going to be called Saiyan Power. It's the combination of the two quirks I described in the last episode, and the name obviously is inspired by Dragon Ball GT. So why would that name even make sense in this verse? Sorry if I mispronounce it, but Seiya is a pun based on the Japanese word for vegetable, yasai. In order to keep up his bioelectricity, Gohan needs to eat a sizable amount of food, thus leading to the food pun. Hence the origin for his name, Great Saiyaman. And I also want to take this time to briefly mention that in the last part, I left a poll asking if you guys wanted to see more Dragon Ball characters in this universe, and a lot of you voted yes. So I took that into account, and I have a lot of characters that are eventually going to show up, but for this part, they're not going to appear besides some slight references, but you'll still see some familiar faces in the future. A few characters will come along that are actually pivotal to the plot, and you'll see what I mean later on. Now we can get into the actual story. So after all is said and done, 1A has to vote for a class president, and like normal, Deku's actually voted in at first, and Gohan even gets a few votes, but he doesn't end up winning. And eventually Ida becomes president like normal. Minor details, but still worth covering. Following this, we lead right into the USJ arc, which gets everyone pretty excited. All of Class 1A is looking forward to testing out their abilities, and the class is led to the USJ facility. The building itself is amazing, and it looks like there's a lot of cool stuff going on, and they can't wait to get to work and put it to use, until an actual unforeseen event happens. Pretty ironic considering where they are. A mysterious black mist appears, and out of this black mist, a bunch of villains appear. Shigaraki and his crew have arrived, and with the help of Kurogiri's quirk, suddenly Class 1A is completely split up. Most of the class ends up in different parts of the facility, and overall everyone's teleported to the same general area. Throwing Gohan into the mix, he ends up getting teleported to where Ojiro is. This is good for Ojiro because originally he was teleported there alone, and now he has Gohan with him. Plus they've even worked together before and they know each other a little bit, so this isn't too bad. For the rest of the class, we'll say that everything goes pretty much the same, at least for now, and we're going to mainly focus on Gohan and Ojiro. Both of them are immediately confused and don't know where they are. They look over and see that they're pretty far away from the entrance and practically on the other side of the facility. They were somehow teleported over here. It must have been that weird black mist that they saw before. Both of them are wary and realize that they were probably teleported here for a reason, and they're right. Not long after, they see villains swarming everywhere around them, and the two of them get into a fighting stance to prepare to battle. In preparation for the USJ training, Gohan actually had a full meal beforehand, so he has some bioelectricity stored up from the caloric intake, which is actually going to be really useful here. The two of them have to come up with a strategy on the fly. Ojiro is obviously more suited for close quarters combat, given his tail and all, while Gohan can perform both in close quarters and from a longer range. Ojiro decides that in order to fight some of the enemies, he'll run up towards them and hit them close quarters, and immediately jump back as Gohan attacks with his bioelectricity. Running doesn't seem to be an option, and they can't really hide either because they've already been spotted, so fighting is really their only way out. Thankfully, there's not too many people around them, only about a half dozen enemies or so. Gohan makes the first move and launches a bunch of energy up in the air, which comes back down towards the enemies. This temporarily stuns and distracts them, and before they know it, 3 of them at once are hit by Ojiro's tail, knocking them flat to the ground. He immediately jumps back and the enemies get back up, but then they suddenly get launched away by another one of Gohan's attacks. The rest of the enemies decide to attack, and Ojiro follows up with the same move. He's able to knock down 2 of them while Gohan gets the other, and they keep following up with these combined attacks. They actually make a pretty good team here, and they're able to gauge the abilities of these enemies, and they realize that they're not really that strong. So Gohan decides to let out one last move and let out a bunch of bioelectricity, which basically knocks them unconscious. Ojiro stands there pretty much amazed that Gohan was able to do that so easily, and Gohan would have done it before, but he wanted to make sure that he wouldn't kill them by doing so. Remember, he is pretty overpowered, he's around Todoroki's level. The thing is too, using his bioelectricity does hurt him a little bit like I mentioned in the last video. So he does feel a little bit of pain here. The good thing about it though is that he's eventually going to get a little bit of a boost in power, due to the other part of his quirk working in tandem with it. Overall though, they're both pretty okay. Since they were able to defeat the enemy so quickly, the good thing is they're not too far from Aoyama, and he was able to hold his own for a bit, but he gets joined by the two of them. You can see this little map that I provided where everyone is. Obviously Hagakure is not there. They decide to take the long way around, and end up making their way towards Kaminari's group. This is good because now they have 6 of them together. This is a pretty powerful team, although Kaminari did just use his electricity and he had his brain fried a little bit. But besides that, they have some powerhouses like Gohan and Yaoyorozu, and they're essentially a miniature squad right now. Following the path up, they pass through where Todoroki was and they could tell he was there with all the ice, and they start making their way towards the front. Kirishima, Bakugo, alongside Todoroki are already up front where All Might is, and currently All Might is fighting Nomu. So pretty much all of Class 1A is back together. All Might's fight with Nomu goes pretty much the same, and then eventually, some of the extra heroes arrive. The villains immediately notice some of these extra heroes here, and how All Might has backup. One of the villains actually gets hit in the face with a long stick, which then retracts and reveals that Uzaru came here. While the villains are already fleeing, Goku had some free time and obviously wanted to show up to make sure his son and his class were all okay. And when everyone sees that there's a bunch of pro heroes, including All Might and Uzaru, they naturally decide to retreat. Overall, it seems like everyone's okay, except for a few minor injuries and Aizawa suffering the worst of them, but they'll all make a full recovery. The heroes are actually amazed at how well the students were able to do, especially Goku, who hears how his son has been performing. Goku's glad to see this growth in Gohan, and begins wondering, maybe Gohan would benefit from shadowing under the same master that he had. The good thing about it is that the sports festival is coming up, so Gohan eventually will get scouted by someone. Eventually things go back to normal, and then we arrive to the sports festival itself. We first start with the scene where All Might takes Deku to lunch, and Deku has to briefly leave from his group, and all 3 of them are actually kind of confused about why All Might is meeting with Deku specifically. They don't question it too much, but they do have a little bit of a suspicion. It's just a little weird to see that All Might knows Deku personally. Class 1B is introduced like normal, and then everyone prepares for the festival. Even in his own classroom, Todoroki wants to challenge people. He challenges Deku like normal because of his quirk, but make no mistake, he also does challenge Gohan. He remembers how evenly matched they were before, and he wants to prove to Gohan how far he is ahead of him. He doesn't even challenge Bakugo, which makes Bakugo feel a little bit down in the dumps. He's beginning to feel more and more left out, and realizes that he's not really the top of the class. Todoroki challenged these two, but not even him. Now we lead into the race. Everyone prepares, and then they start. Todoroki sets up ice for everyone at the starting gate, but people break out of it like normal, especially Gohan, who does it easily. Something like that isn't going to slow him down. Gohan and Todoroki are neck and neck. Todoroki is getting more and more arrogant and annoyed by Gohan being so close behind, and even starts laying some more ice to trip Gohan up. If you remember how I broke down his quirk in the last episode, he's naturally pretty quick, which allows him to keep up, and any ice that he encounters gets broken through pretty easily. Gohan just focuses attention on the competition and tries to brush off Todoroki's rivalry, and he's a little bit concerned about why he's being so aggressive towards him and everyone else around him. He thought this would be a little bit of a friendly competition, but Todoroki's taking it kinda serious. Gohan just tries to keep his distance as much as he can, and the good thing is the track is kind of expansive, so he's able to do so. Needless to say, he's able to clear all the obstacles pretty easily and actually remain ahead. He and Todoroki both struggle for first, while Bakugo and Deku eventually catch up. Bakugo's really close behind to both of them, and suddenly they're shocked as they see Deku fly far above them, with him coming in first place. Not long after, Gohan runs through the finish line, coming in second, Todoroki in third, and Bakugo in fourth. That was pretty unexpected, but he's still glad that he got second place. And if anyone was to beat him, at least it was one of the people he was friendly with. He congratulates Deku on the win, and Deku congratulates him as well. Todoroki's annoyed coming in third, but he brushes it off, and Bakugo's understandably pretty pissed. The top 42 students move on to the Cavalry battle, where Deku literally gets a 10 million point bounty placed on his head. Like, literally, he wears it on his head. Sadly for him, at first, no one really wants to team with him because he's such a huge target, but he ends up getting joined by Uraraka. Gohan's not really sure which team he wants to join, and he knows he works pretty well with Ojiro in battle, so he's torn between that team and joining with Deku. He then sees that Ida left the group and decided to go on his own, due to him seeing Deku as a rival as well, and not really wanting to team up with him. Gohan understands Ida's feelings and where he's coming from, but he feels kind of bad about this and decides he might as well join Deku and not let his friends down. He doesn't have the same feelings of rivalry, and he knows their abilities pretty well and they have good communication. Plus, they're all pretty friendly, so it should work out. And now they need a fourth member, and that ends up being Mei Hatsumi. She joins pretty much like normal, which means Tokoyami ends up on a different team. Let's just say he ends up on the team with Jiro, Koda, and Sato. As expected, everyone attacks Deku's team because they have the most points. But the good thing is, Deku and Gohan are powerhouses. Their first big challenge is when Kaminari lets out a shock that affects almost everyone in the arena. Gohan goes in front as a horse too, and since he's used to electric shock like that, he tries to absorb as much of it as he can. It does hurt him a bit, but eventually he's able to actually deflect it by letting out his own bioelectricity. This even saves Deku's backpack from getting fried, meaning they could still get a lot of air. With two of the horses basically being able to float, Gohan being able to jump extreme heights, and Deku now having his backpack, they're even able to remain off the ground a bit. For the other teams, a lot of it goes pretty much the same, and they get to the final minutes of the battle. Todoroki's team launches their full attack on Deku's team, going for Deku's headband. Using something similar to what Kaminari did, even though it'll hurt him a bit, Gohan deploys a massive electric shock towards their group, effectively paralyzing that entire group as they launch towards Deku's group. They're purely playing defensively. A fierce battle commences between Todoroki and Gohan, with Gohan now on top of the horse supporting the group, wielding Deku's headband. With Deku using some of his ability, and Gohan using some of his abilities, they hold off a lot of the attacks from Todoroki's group and are able to defend themselves. This leads us to the end of the Cavalry battle. Deku's team was able to effectively defend themselves. Second place is Team Bakugo, third place is Team Shinzo, and coming in fourth is Team Todoroki. Except for Gohan replacing Tokiyami, the contestants that won are relatively the same. However, Todoroki decides that he wants to talk to Gohan and Deku alone. During his fight against both of them, he actually broke his pledge to himself and used part of his fire powers, and he could tell that they're formidable opponents. Of course he knows where Gohan's strength comes from, but then he questions Deku, asking if he's All Might's illegitimate son. This actually gets Gohan kinda curious too, cause he never thought of that but realized that there was something suspicious going on between the two of them, especially with the similarities in their quirks. And pretty much like normal, Todoroki cements his rivalry with these two, him being related to the number 2 pro hero, and Deku being in some way related to the number 1 hero, while Gohan's related to the number 3 hero. But on the flip side, Todoroki reveals the bad side of his father. He makes the promise to them that he'll rise to the top, all without using his left side ever again. And in response, each of them promises to get to the top, each individually wanting to become number 1, with Gohan and Deku's rivalry being a lot more friendly. And of course, Bakugo's been listening on the whole thing. With that battle over, we now get to the one-on-one fights. Gohan's pretty glad to see that Ojiro made it this far, but then out of nowhere he drops out for no reason seemingly. He explains that it has to do with Shinzo's quirk. He has absolutely no memory of the battle, and it must be some sort of brainwashing thing that happened to him. He doesn't feel it's right to come into this tournament, and Shoto from his team withdraws as well. The first round of fights goes relatively the same, with Gohan beating Yaoyorozu. He replaces Tokiyami, so I'm just going to put him in that same position. The rest of the tournament goes pretty similar as well, and everyone actually gets to see Todoroki use his other power, his left side. It's pretty amazing to see, and like normal he defeats Deku. And now we come to the semifinals. The first match is between Todoroki and Ida, and next is Gohan and Bakugo. Todoroki's fight with Ida goes pretty normally, but here we start to see a change because Bakugo now has a new opponent. This fight is actually pretty amazing. Bakugo knows that Gohan's a tough opponent, and Gohan knows the same about Bakugo. While Bakugo uses his explosions, Gohan utilizes his bioelectricity and his natural strength. Bakugo is a lot more agile because he can use his explosions to move, but in terms of pure speed and reflexes, Gohan has him beat. As I've been mentioning so far, Gohan still had that trouble with controlling his electricity, and since he still can't focus it too well, it does hurt him when he uses it. Against Bakugo, throwing a mindless blast of electricity won't really do too much, especially when Bakugo's throwing explosions right back. Gohan has been practicing though, and he decides to try something that he hasn't really tried before. While jumping around trying to dodge all of Bakugo's attacks, he's going to attempt to focus his energy into one point, trying to focus it into a powerful long-range blast that he could throw at Bakugo. Like I've mentioned before, his bioelectricity kind of works like ki, so in a way it is kind of like regular electricity, but also, it does have a little bit of force behind it. So instead of being exactly like Kaminari's where it will just shock people, it does have a little bit of a figurative punch behind it. It is based on ki after all. Although it kind of pains him to do, Gohan attempts to focus this. With one blast, he'll be able to knock Bakugo out. He's gonna overcome that wall that he's faced with his quirk and actually learn to use it more effectively. He starts by cupping his hands, with sparks of electricity flying out as he's dodging against Bakugo's blast. The electricity in his hands keeps getting built up and gets more focused, and eventually it even creates a small ball. He actually was able to create somewhat of a small blast, but it feels kinda unstable. Preparing to launch it towards Bakugo, he throws his hands behind his back and then flings them forward, firing the blue blast of energy towards Bakugo. You see where I'm getting at? Bakugo attempts to blast the small ball of energy away, but it completely tears through his explosions, and Bakugo even tries to catch it, but then it flings him out of the ring, both shocking him and pushing him back at the same time. As Bakugo flies out of the ring, the blast then flies up in the air, where it explodes into a brilliant flash of light. Gohan catches his breath, and he did feel a bit of pain from that, but after watching what Deku did, he felt motivated to try out something new, pushing himself to a brand new limit. It doesn't really matter too much though because he can get healed by Recovery Girl, but it still was interesting to try out his power like this, similar to what Deku did. He's never tried anything like this before, and he feels like he wants to try and learn it again. Gohan is victorious, and next he's going to face Todoroki. However, this episode's getting a little bit long, so we're going to save that for the next part, and also, we're going to cover something pretty interesting next time. After the end of that battle, we're going to see students going to different workplaces. And earlier in the episode, I mentioned how Goku has an idea of who he wants Gohan to work with, his former master. I won't give away who I'm referring to, but you might be able to tell, and we'll get to see a little bit of him next time. Anyways, we're going to leave off here for now. So what did you guys think about this part? What do you think will happen next time? Leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to check them out to see what you guys think. As always, if you liked the video, be sure to drop a like, and let's see if we can hit that like goal of 3,000 likes that I said at the beginning of this video. If you haven't already, why not subscribe, as well as hitting the bell icon to get notified about future parts of this What If, or any other videos that I upload to my channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you on my next video.